today. Need to call the meeting to order, so would everyone please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as usual, silence your cell phones, please. Ms. Sills, would you do the roll call?
Mayor Plummer,
Here.
Commissioner Brooks,
Here.
Commissioner Fields,
Here.
Commissioner Withrow will not be here today. You know, Commissioner Gray, you know. We do have a quorum and ready for the transaction of business.
Ms. Miller?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. That brings us to item 4, which is approval of the minutes. We have one item for the January 10th, 2023 regular meeting. Are there any comments or revisions suggested to the minutes as presented? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to number 5, which is the franchise agreement for electric services. This is an item that we've talked about. We've had a workshop on. We've had the first reading. So I'm just going to run through the item one more time to talk about what we have here and the different backup materials that were provided. So the first item you have here is an impact chart where Kentucky Utilities assisted by giving sample bills in order to see, as we change the franchise rates, what the average impact would be to a bill. This is just a sample. This isn't necessarily exact, and we know that bills may change from month to month for each customer. So this just gives you an idea. Go ahead, Ms. Lydia. And then next, this is a chart provided, Kentucky Utilities had provided a much expanded one that looked at the rates from 1% to 5% in 0.5% increments of the city expected revenue. This, after the previous reading, I've condensed down to just between the 1.24 and the 3% mark of the expected revenue that could be provided to the city based on the franchise fee. This is a sample of the city's KU bills for the past 12 months, just to give you an idea of what the city pays. That is an item that was requested. So I'm just going to run through, I'm not going to re-give the workshop, but to give you a high-level overview, make sure everybody understands what we're discussing today, the history is we have had a ordinance with Kentucky Utilities for a franchise agreement. This allows them to use the city's right-of-way to conduct business, and the city receives a pass-through revenue based on that. Go ahead and scroll. So this is a multi-step process that we're working through. We're just in the beginning of it, and what we're doing is we're establishing the franchise and we're authorizing it to go out to bid. Later, once we receive the bids back, we will bring those back for approval. So there's a multi-step process that we're going through here. To highlight, one of the things that we talked about is that the current method of the calculation of the franchise amount is changing. So previously it was, I would say, complex as we looked at residential, commercial, and industrial revenue and how that played a part into it. But it has been simplified going forward. If you keep going, Ms. Lydia. So the new method is much more straightforward, and it just looks at total revenue of all types of customers times the franchise fee that is proposed. So we currently, there's some provided information to show that 3% is the standard, but it can range between 0 to 5%. Under our current method of calculation, it comes in at about 1.24%. So we were left with discussing where do we want to have that franchise rate set going forward. You can keep going through that, that's okay. And then the other part of the discussion is how long do we want the term to be. So what we talked about last meeting is, and at the workshop, is that we were looking for a little bit of a shorter term. We weren't necessarily looking to do a 20-year term again because we wanted to make sure we were reviewing this regularly. We had proposed last meeting a 7-year term. And the reason we did that was to align it with our other franchise agreements that we have on the table. So the other piece is we had put in the first reading 3% because based on discussion at the workshop, we felt that that was really the highest that we were gonna come in at. But after discussion last meeting, and we talked a little bit about the tiered process and looking at the impact to the customers, I know we came in saying that some of the commission was comfortable with 3%, but after further review, we are recommending that we do go with that tiered approach in order to make it phased in a little bit easier for the change to people, so they're not seeing a large change. So what we have it drafted now is, and the dates are still outstanding because this would be covered once we award the franchise, but that we would do a tiered approach of doing a 2, and then after a period of time, a 2.5, and then we would get to 3 towards the end of the 7-year period that we're looking at. So that is how it's drafted up for the second reading. Again, we're just looking to create the franchise, authorize the bid at this point. Brian, did I leave anything out, or did you have any?
No, I'm sure there'll be other, we have the proposed franchise agreement. I'm sure that the bidder, I don't think there's a second bidder, and this is a non-exclusive franchise anyway, has some concerns with some of the language, and has some questions about some of the language. I explained some of the background the city's had. I think that gave them context. They had also explained to me, the attorney explained to me some of the concerns they had. So for example, and we all know, as we did with the sales tax issue on utilities, making a change mid-billing cycle is almost impossible. So when we talk about firm dates in the future, it probably wouldn't be the first of the month. It would align with their billing cycles when they make changes. And obviously we are very sympathetic to that concern as well. So what I would expect is of course, any public utility, and by that I mean a utility that's regulated by the Kentucky PSC, they have to get permission to bid on this. So assuming you all pass this ordinance, KU has to go get permission to bid, which surely is a formality, but it does take a little time, and then they'll respond to this, and then that will allow, with your all permission, Jamie and I to sit down with them, have further discussions, and then probably in 2 to 3 months time period, maybe quicker if we can, bring back the response to the bid and the formal agreement, and then you all pass it at that time. But let me have just kind of the formal reading. So this will be upon passage ordinance 23-1, which is an ordinance adopting a franchise agreement for the provision of electric service within the city. Of course, this is authorized under Kentucky law. The percentage of the franchise fee can be as high as 5%. Of course, you all have not elected to take it to that level, and more the tiered approach in. Therefore, be it ordained by the City Commission of the City of Paris, Kentucky, that we're going to do several things with this ordinance. First, the notice shall be given at a date and time specified by the city manager for the city to receive offers. This is technically a sale. I know that seems a little wonky, but that comes from our old language in the law. A sale to the highest and best bidder, plus all costs, including advertising, for a franchise for the sale and distribution of electricity is more fully set forth in the attached franchise agreement. City manager will conduct the bid process and any subsequent negotiations that may be necessary in accordance with Kentucky law and our city policy. City manager you all are then authorizing the city manager to negotiate the terms of the franchise agreement with terms substantially similar to the draft agreement that's attached, and then the city manager will come back to you all and recommend an award of any non-exclusive franchise agreements to be considered by this body, and then ultimately for you all to approve the award of the franchise and any terms. So that's the ordinance. We need a motion and a second for
I'll make a motion.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I like the tiered approach.
We also have our representatives from Kentucky Utilities here if there's any questions for them or any of the team here.
Thank you all for coming.
Hearing none, Stephanie, please call the roll.
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Fields?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to consent agenda item, which is number 6. We do have 12 items to consider, A through L. A lot of them, I will note, are related to appointments to boards as well as some hiring of some staff. We're particularly excited to see some movement on the dispatcher hires. So are there any of the items presented before you today that any of the commission would like to pull off and discuss separately? Hearing none, may I get a motion to approve consent agenda A through L?
So moved.
A motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to regular agenda item number 7. This is an update on our cleaner water funding program. I will just, if it indulges the commission, give you a brief update there. There was 2 rounds of cleaner water program funding that the city received. The first round of cleaner water funding was placed towards the Millersburg sanitary sewer line going out towards the park area. When we received the second round, there was sufficient to cover the current project profile for the rest of the Millersburg sanitary sewer project. Now, as time goes on, we know costs change, and so not to say that this will be fully covered, but it will be mostly covered by these funds, and we'll be working with the Bluegrass ad to see if we can make any changes as those projects go forward. But we did find ourselves with some additional funding available, and this is an item that we had to work together with the county to agree on how these funds would be expended going forward. So last year, at the end of last year, we brought forward some resolutions and some authorizations to take these cleaner water funding projects forward, and the second project would be the planning and design just related to the water portion of that related project. So out towards the Millersburg for, sometimes it's called the tank project, but it's more than the tank, it's related to water. So that would just be planning and design that we would be funding with this cost. So we're doing multiple things with this item here. The first one is we generally establish a project which will say, this is a project, this is why we're doing it. If we've received any funding, this is the funding we've received. It's always our goal to continue to seek additional funding opportunities for our project. It authorizes the mayor and I to sign any documents that don't need to come back to the city, authorizes us to look at different fiscal management items that we need to do for the project. So the first thing that we would be doing related to the Cleaner Water Program funding would be establishing the Millersburg tank project. We've already done the sanitary sewer line as an established project when we received the first award. The second thing is we are required to sign the KIA, Kentucky's Infrastructure Authority, conditional commitment letters, just saying that we're aware that we're receiving these funds, that there are conditions placed on it that we have to follow in order to receive those funds. And then the last thing that we are looking to do is contract with the Bluegrass ad to help us administer this grant and this project. So those are the 3 items that we are looking to complete under item 7A today. Are there any questions on any of those items? Brian, do I need to do separate motions for the, getting a head nod, yes, so we will.
Yeah.
The first item that I would request a motion on is a motion to approve municipal order 2023-7, which is a municipal order approving the creation of the Millersburg Road Tank project and providing for the expedited approval of items related to such project.
So move.
Second.
Stephanie, can you call the roll?
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Commissioner Fields.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item B is authorizing the mayor to sign the required documents for the KIA conditional commitment letter for both projects. I have a motion to authorize the mayor, city manager, and city clerk to execute all necessary documents, and I believe the city attorney at some point will have to execute a document as well.
So moved.
Second.
motion and a second. Excuse me, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And then the last item that we have is 2 agreements with the Bluegrass Area Development District for administration of the grants. May I have a motion to approve those agreements?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that will involve signatures as well. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item B, which is a ratification of emergency purchase. This is an item related to, we had, after the high waters and the storms, we had an issue with one of our aerial gravity sewer lines that crosses Houston Creek. It did have some issues and the piers had washed out, so we did have to make an emergency repair. That emergency repair, the final cost is estimated between $50,000 to $60,000. The work has been done, we're just waiting on the final invoice in order to have that. So we have 2 parts to this. Is one, we're going to issue the authorization for the emergency, which includes the ratification of the emergency repair. And then there will be a second part for a more long-term repair that will need to be completed. That is currently out to bid, and we anticipate that it will close this Thursday is the closing date for that. And we will be requesting a special meeting be considered in order to award that bid and keep that project moving forward. So, Brian, did you want to highlight anything?
That's it. I think you've got we've written this up as a formal resolution, which covers everything that Jamie just mentioned. So we have the declaration of the emergency, which will be on file with the city clerk, and to ratify the repairs that have been made or are being finalized, and then move forward with the bid on a more long-term solution. You just need a motion and a second to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I just know that, as I've kind of mentioned here at some of the meetings, we have been able to set quite a bit of money aside for in the utility fund, so we'll have the funds available, especially for the more permanent bids.
Are there any questions or comments related to this item?
The amount was 50 to 60.
For the temporary repair? Yes, sir. Okay. Stephanie, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Commissioner Fields.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. And then the second item for that would be requesting a special meeting. I would recommend this Friday afternoon. That should give time for staff to receive the bids on Thursday afternoon and review them. But we would like to come into a special meeting in order to approve that. If not Friday, we could do Monday as well. The temporary repair is completed, but we want to move forward with purpose as we know that there's always with a temporary repair, if we receive more storms or anything, there's a chance or a risk that there could be further issues. So do you have any preference between Friday or Monday?
Friday sounds good to me.
Friday works better.
Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon, yes. So Stephanie will work to get that posted and an agenda put together for you all.
Okay.
Excuse me, next Mike's gonna give you guys an update on the transfer station.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Well, the good news is last week we received environmental clearance to move forward. So, we talked to Vaughn Williams with Kim Barnes yesterday. They plan on having the bids out for the tree removal next week. We don't see it being no problem getting the trees down before the March 31st deadline. They just gotta be on, at most, they just gotta be on the ground, as long as the plants can't roost on March, we're in good shape on that. Working on getting surveyors to get the plats drawn up, so get the property lines refined and all that. We did make a change from our first drawings. If you notice, to the right-hand side, where the tanks are gonna be, where you unload We moved it from Ramshead side to the Martin Luther King side. That fits it better on the property, so it'll change the layout just a little, but nothing major. I actually like it better, it kinda hides it even more from where it was originally at. It changed the road layout just a little, but nothing major on that. As y'all know, we got a $2 million grant on the project. We're working on a Swiffer grant to help with the building and equipment. And we're looking for any other available grant that might help the project along. Like I said, we don't see no issues getting the trees removed or anything like that. By our project schedule, we're still on time. For now, everybody knows supply and demand. Supply chain issues are gonna be a problem at some point. We expect that, but, we're sticking, I mean, by our timeline, we're sticking to it pretty close. And as most of y'all know, this project has a very fast timeline to be completed, so, I don't see it's getting done earlier than that, but I think we're gonna be good on most of it. We're gonna have a committee meeting sometime next week. I'll send out emails to everyone to get them together. I've got some preliminary plans that they've shared with us and stuff to go over. And if y'all have any questions, I'll answer them.
So if I may just add a couple of things real quick, thank you, Mike. I am going to meet with the gentleman from the Bluegrass ad today to go over the Swiffer grant that they're putting together, so that is moving along within the appropriate timeline. They are writing that grant for us at no charge.
Is
So
that Bob Casher?
it is, and they're Donald Glover is the point person on it, but it's with Bob's team. So the Swiffer grant is moving along great. That award is anticipated anywhere between $500,000 and $4 million, and it is a non-matching grant. So we're pretty excited about that grant and hopeful, and I think Bluegrass Ad does a good job, and I know we've got some community members who are doing a great job keeping engaged to make sure that we're making contacts and making sure people are aware of the project and it stays on everybody's radar. The other item I wanted to mention, which is not related to the relocation of the transfer station, but the future of the redevelopment of the current site. And Andrea can chime in on this as well, but we had a meeting with a company, Tetra Tech. They contract with the Atlanta arm of the EPA. They are their brownfield experts, if you will. So we had some discussion about the complexity of this project and the way forward, and talking with the Bluegrass Ad, you really do need people who specialize in brownfield remediation to assist through this project. So two parts just to make you aware of. One, they have offered to do a roadmap for the project. Their estimated cost is about $20,000, and that would outline for us the different steps that we would need to go through for the project. And then they estimate that future funding would be done under administration of grants that they would assist us with obtaining. The other part of that is the Bluegrass Ad has offered to help us issue an RFP for brownfield remediation assistance. So we would issue an RFP for that. Other companies are welcome to apply. It doesn't have to be Tetra Tech necessarily, but we do know that that's the group that is often used in this area. So wanted to make you guys aware the $20,000 is not a budgeted cost for the roadmap. I do believe that it would serve a good purpose for us if we want to keep this project moving. So that is something that would require a budget amendment. And then timing of this, one of the other things that we know is that a lot of these grant funding opportunities, the city will have to relinquish their ownership of the property in order to be eligible for a lot of these grant funding opportunities when it comes to brownfield assessment. So that is a decision that we will have to continue to discuss how we approach that. But we also have to be mindful of the timing of the cycles. So we're currently operating on the old site. We can't turn over the ownership of it too soon. because we have to continue to operate there until we can get the new one up and running. And while we have to spend the $2 million by 2024, that does not necessarily mean doors will be open and ready to go at that point. So it's a big dance and there's a lot of moving parts. Andrea, I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to add on that?
Just one more, so the big target deadline is November. That is when the EPA has their grant window for the remediation of the existing site. So all of these things that are kind of happening in concert, the main date to get the grant submitted for remediation of the site is going to be sometime in early November. So I just want to make you all aware of that kind of milestone coming up.
Which we don't anticipate that the new site will be open by November. So that'll be, as we indicated, something that we have to work through, whether it's this round of the grant funding or next rounding of the grant funding. I definitely have a partner who helps us work through that. I believe would be an advantage. Any questions for anybody?
Bill and Vanessa, you two have worked real hard on this project. Do you all have any questions or comments or concerns that we need to hear?
No, Bill and I are kept informed by everybody, you know, as to the status and updates and everything, so no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
So there are no actions to be taken. The item I would say is there interest from commission for us to bring back a look at some type of roadmap to work on the project for Tetra Tech. So we'll bring that forward for future consideration and discussion. Brad, that brings us to item 7D, financials.
All right, thank you. On page 115 is where the financials start, and we have the cash balances for the general fund. You can still see that as of the end of December, operating funds unrestricted are $10,134,000. Down a little bit from where we were at November, but December is usually one of those months where we have light cash collection as well. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing that decrease. Moving on to page 116, and you'll see the summary of revenue and expenditures. Just a few items to point out on our current taxes. We are fairly close to what we had budgeted. I think in January, we'll probably get to where we had budgeted, if not over, on those amounts. And then also to moving down to occupational licenses. Year to date through December, you can see we're at 2.1 million. Had a budget of right around 3,750,000. Usually what I like to do on my projections is kind of multiply this out, by a monthly allocation. So if we do that, we're looking at where we're going to kind of be over on our budget for the revenue, but I still, on my projection, want to keep it at 3.7 million because I just don't want to have that projection be too high come the end of the year. But I think we're looking fairly good to meet our budget or go over on our occupational. You can see on the insurance license fee, looks like on our projection that we'll be just right at our budget or about $30,000 to $50,000 over. Business profits right now is kind of trending to be over budget as well. Moving on to page 117, the other item that I wanted to point out on the revenue is that have recognized the ARPA, the second round of ARPA funds, the $1,295,961. We actually had received that money in June, but we have deferred that revenue until this current fiscal year when we'll show those expenditures. So with that said, right now our revenues are at $6,452,000 year to date, and our expenses are at $4,791,000, leaving us revenues over expenditures of $1,660,000. Obviously, if we take out the ARPA fund of $1.2 million, we're really about $400,000 over revenues over budget. Projecting out, still looking to still have revenues over expenditures of about $835,000 for the year. Moving on to page 118 for utility fund cash balances. You'll see we're at $742,000 for unrestricted funds at the end of December. Down in what we call our restricted funds, we're actually up about $100,000 from the end of November, so 1.9 million. And for the special meeting on Friday for the bids, what I'll do is I'll have a breakout for the construction fund as far as what's kind of set aside for the electric meter fee that we collect every month, and then also kind of what's available for construction projects, unrestricted construction projects, like what we'll be doing with the sewer repair. Then moving on to page 119, nothing really to kind of point out on the revenues and projections at this point. We are at the end of December, revenues are $5,751,000. Still kind of projecting 19 million in revenues, but that's also kind of depending on some of the timing of the transfer station and then also some of the water improvement projects out at the water plant. So that number may change a little bit as we get more into the end of the second half of this year. And then, as you can see, our total expenditures in the utility fund are at $5,221,000, leaving us with revenues exceeding expenditures by $530,000. Looking over a projection right now, still showing that we should be in fairly good shape on the revenue side and also on the expenditure side. So projections have revenues over expenditures by about $1,448,000. And that's kind of the summarized part of that, and then you have all the detailed pages after that as far as for both general and utility fund.
Do most of our departments still within their budget framework? Does it look like any of our departments might go over their budget?
We'll start working on that. I think as a total budget for each department, I think we're still kind of right on line, especially some of the things that have been approved throughout the year. We do have some areas where line by line, we are going over budget on those, and we have a procedure kind of set up to recognize when we go over on a certain line item that we have, a handful of other line items. If we're not over with, we can kind of pull up to that line item to make our budget work. So we're working with department heads to make sure from a line by line standpoint, we're watching budgets.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to our reports of outside agencies. Andrew, would you like to go first?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm gonna talk about Planning Commission, some of the development plans that have been approved. So this past month, the Hutton Group, submitted an application for an urgent care center in the Walmart development. That was approved by the Planning Commission, last week. It is a roughly 5,000 square foot urgent care center, and it will be in the lot adjacent to Dairy Queen. Walmart also has an amended development plan that's been approved by Planning Commission. It is to add another roughly 5,000 square foot addition onto the main building for online pickup and sales. So that's what's happened in the past month, a couple of commercial development plans. Next month, we are looking to bring the revitalization overlay district to the Planning Commission. I don't know yet if they'll be voting on it, but we will at least present the draft information that we have so far. We've been working on the Joint Code Enforcement Board ordinance. And we're hoping to bring that before you all in the coming month. So we've been working with Brian on the language of that, and something that we've learned throughout this process is that Code enforcement, it touches on almost every other section of the codes and ordinances for the city of Paris. So it's kind of a snowball effect. Once you start looking at one ordinance, then you have to look at all of them. So tomorrow we have our first meeting with a mapping consultant to update our zoning maps online. Just similar to the codes and ordinances for the city of Paris, the planning commission does these updates once every year or two. So a lot of the map amendments that have occurred recently over the past 2 years, they will be updated on our website. Have a lot of other things, but training, we've been doing a lot of training recently through our office. And I will actually be going to Frankfurt next week for a floodplain management training. Couple of things I want to make you aware of regarding floodplain management. This spring, we will be receiving a site visit from FEMA to the city to review our participation in the Community Rating System, CRS program. This is what makes flood insurance rates and rate holders get discounts on their flood insurance rates. So they will be coming in March. The second thing related to floodplain is this year, toward the end of the year, FEMA will actually be updating the flood insurance rate maps for our community, which is, it only happens, the last time it happened was in 2011. So this is going to be a big deal for our community, and so once those draft maps are made available, there'll be public meetings and opportunities for folks that might think their property is not in the floodplain or their structure is not susceptible to flooding to receive an amendment with FEMA. So there's a lot flood related, and if anyone has questions about any of that, feel free to come see me and we can talk more in detail. But that's all I have for today. Lots going on.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Wilson, would you like to provide an update?
Morning.
Good morning.
Well, we've got quite a few items here on the list. We probably wore Jamie out. Charlie Rowland, our new legal counsel for EDA, he worked in the cabinet for, I guess, 4.5 years. So I kind of put him in charge of the letters of support on projects and coordinating some things with economic development cabinet. And he called me when I was on the way in here, and I'll get with you later on that. But the first item I have on here is Vantor is going to KEFT, a board meeting this week for approval on $11.5 million expansion with 10 new jobs. It was down from, it started out at 20 million, but all this is being handled through corporate, and so I think that's why there's been a lot of changes from the beginning. Our next item is CM Cut CM. That's the building industry on the left-hand side as you enter the industrial park. We gave them a pass-through grant we got from Lexington Board of Realtors. It's an annual $2,000 grant, and you submit it and tell them what you're going to use it for, which we did, and so we presented it to CM Cut CM last week's board meeting, and it's just beyond belief. I think the first year that they opened up for business, they had 6 employees, and now they're up to 40, and they've got 2 laser bending machines there, and they're add another one, but they're up to 40 employees. They've got a day shift, a night shift, weekend shift, and they're going to double all that. So, but you know, we asked them at the board meeting, well, why how did this all come about? You know, you all didn't really think that the corporate folks didn't think there'd be that growth that quick, and they said, well, it's just beyond belief, being in central Kentucky and how fast you can ship to all parts of the United States. We never dreamed that it would be that, be that good. And they've got two shipment lines over there, gonna add a third one, and they're gonna add a coating of the products that they make there. They're gonna have a coating, paint coating operation going also. But so we're tickled. They've just, it's just beyond belief. I went in there and took some school students there last week, and I couldn't believe it. I hadn't been in there in about 6 months. So the next item we have is the sale of the Ag Tech building. We're still working with numerous companies, and last week we did a Zoom call with a company from India that's teaming up with Dow Chemical. They're very much interested in the building, and we've been working through the state on incentives for them, so we hope they're gonna hopefully be here in the next 2 to 3 weeks coming from India to physically look at the building. So it would employ about 50 people, and they want to add on to the building. It's a waterproofing company, and they want to add about 25,000 square feet onto the building. So, but there's also about 3 other companies looking at it. So, but these have really been, this company's really been intense. The next item, we had a site visit from a Japanese company about 5 weeks ago that manufacture plastic pellets, and it would be a good fit here because of CSX and TTI. They'd be able to bring their raw material in by rail and ship it out, which they do over there now for a company in Frankfurt. I don't know where the pellets come from, but they download them here and ship them to Frankfurt. So they're supposed to be back in another 3 or 4 weeks to meet with the railroad folks and see how we could possibly work all that out. The next item is we had a company come from New Hampshire, which is a medical glove company, and they're teaming up with a company in Central Kentucky that don't currently, they manufacture equipment for medical glove manufacturing, but they want to team up with this company and build a plant in our industrial park. But it's kind of complex and situation. There's a lot of federal funding out there since the pandemic for this type of thing, and we met on that same day when they came to look at the site at Congressman Barr's office, their field representatives and McConnell's field representatives to talk through the process. So we've had a couple of meetings. They told us certain items that we need to work on, like letters of support and getting some other information. And they've had a dialogue going pretty much weekly. So it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, but there's hope there. And prior to all this, we met with Secretary Knoll in Frankfurt with the same group, and so we're going to be working with them on some possible funding. You're talking big money here. You're talking probably $150 million to build the building and get the thing in operation, and so we hope in the next 2 or 3 months to have something definitive figured out here. The next item is we finally got approval from Atlanta on our connector road to let us bid the project. So it's hopefully going to be advertised this week, and we're shooting for February 17th to accept bids. And we hope to start construction, but it's all based on Atlanta giving us approval. Once we get the bids, I got a list of paperwork you wouldn't believe to review and submit with the bids to Atlanta, and they've got to send it to Washington, and then it comes back, hopefully approved. So that's on the horizon. I guess it was in 1st of November, we had a site visit from Site Selection Group out of Dallas that represents the Kentucky Economic Development Cabinet on this PDI program, the Product Development Initiative. The legislature, I guess you'd say, updated last year. They had $100 million out there for communities to utilize for either purchasing land or doing site development, that sort of thing. So we submitted the PDI application on the Bourbon-Nicholas County Regional Industrial Park for the purpose of purchasing the land. So it's a 50-50 match. I think it was about 700,000 that we submitted our application on. We hope to hear on that by the target date for the state, I think, was late February. So we hope to hear back, and hopefully it's, you know, I think there were 70 communities that submitted out of 120. The funding is based on population, so we're hopeful that we get that award. But I think even if we don't, you know, both fiscal courts have decided that, you know, we're definitely going to go forward. How this really came about was about 3 years ago. At the time of the pandemic, KU came to me and said, we've got 3 sites that we'd like for you all to consider for future industrial development. And the first 2 I won't go into, but they didn't work out. So I said, well, where's the 3rd one? They said, well, it's at the Millersburg-Nicholas County line on Carter Pike. So, and the reason they chose the site is there's unlimited electrical capacity there, along with Columbia Gases. This is the only transmission line they have in their system that's unlimited. The transmission line goes from West Virginia to Toyota. So, but we're very hopeful that we get that award and we start moving on with our planning process. CSX is very interested in this site as well as Toyota. I'm sorry, STTI. So, and they all came, as well as Congressman Bart. We had a meeting down on site, and so we've got a lot of interest in it, and we hope we get word on the award by late February and be able to move forward. See if I missed anything here. And I think that's it. So, anybody got any questions?
Thank you.
By the way, thank you, Mayor and Jamie, for quick response on all these letters and whatnot. And you think, well, it doesn't mean too much, but it does. And the cabinet's appreciative.
Well, thank you for everything you do. I appreciate it, the EDA.
No, it takes everybody to, you know, it's not just me by a long shot.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
and I've said this 1,000 times since I've been here. The cabinet recognizes how the communities are involved and the response they give. And y'all have done a good job, as well as the county, and it shows. I mean, we're getting a lot of calls, we're getting a lot of visits, you know, and so it's, you know, these young site selection folks that are in their, you know, late 20s, 30s, you know, they size up a community and make the choices where they're going to locate. And, you know, they've been very impressed, but and I've been here, I guess, going on, this will be the 10th year, and I've never seen like this before. But every day it's something new, but, you know, interested in our community. So.
What was the name of that company that you talked about that's grown so much again?
Sin Cut Sin.
Yeah.
The guy looks like a high school student. Wait a minute. He's there, I'm getting up real old. So. Anything else?
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you.
That brings us to staff reports. Cynthia, do you have anything? Okay, Chad?
No.
Chitas? Mike, anything else?
The only thing I got is we got the bid back on the elevators. We plan on getting that together and get that in the next commission.
Mr. Barker?
Yeah, just somewhat of a, for your information, we've had some issues with some housing authority leaders.
Come up.
Sure. Can I use the microphone?
Yes.
had some issues with some housing authority meters. There's about 5 or 6 housing authorities within the city. All of them work at their individual locations on one electric meter. And then we send a bill to the housing authority itself. They bill their customers independently and separately by monitoring meters that are at their residences on location. We're looking to change those out to basically a standard individual meter, just like what would be at your own house, and put those into our system. We have gotten a source for meters because some of our meters are just no longer made to work with our system anymore, the reading system that we have. So that's something we're going to be bringing before you probably next meeting, is just to look at those options for approval, some ways to do the billing for them, just some things like that. So I just want to make you all aware. It's a concern of ours. It has been for a little while, but it was something that we couldn't really do much about without having some meters to do it with. But since we've been able to source those, we're going to push forward with that. So just want to make you all aware of it. Probably something to really look forward to. Okay.
Thank you.
Chief Jeffrey?
Just actively trying to find people to come to work. That's about it.
Stephanie?
I don't have anything.
Brian?
Nothing else?
Brian? I don't have anything today actually either.
I'm fine.
I'm good.
One thing, last week, I went to the Combined Recreation Board, and I want to bring this to you because I don't want the commission to think that I'm trying to act on my own or be a maverick or anything. But I brought an issue before the Recreation Board about the fact that while campaigning, there were people who approached me and said they wanted more activities in our community, especially for those who are not athletic. They have some children. One lady said, if my son takes 2 steps, he stumbles. And so she and several others, and I think they were sort of all together in a way, they were wanting the Combined Recreation Board to start presenting programs or activities where they don't have to take their kids to Georgetown or Lexington because they don't fit athletically. And so I made a presentation to the board, talked about the possibility of maybe hoping they can present things like lectures, musical events, crafts, whatever, not just for young people, but for all age citizens in Bourbon County. I talked about the fact that they may have to combine with some of the other groups or agencies in the county to share the cost, programming, whatever. And if they plan to do anything like this in the future, there is a possibility that we may need to increase their budget. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. They were very polite, they listened, they asked questions, and I said thank you very much, and that was all. The ball is now in their court, and I think Commissioner Brooks is on that board, and I think that maybe in the future we will see some changes. May not be big changes, may not be the type of changes that these parents and other citizens are interested in, but I think we will see some activity, hopefully, from the Combined Recreation Board.
And I think, from that, I mean, we, I guess, talked to a couple, are going to talk to a couple of partners like the Extension Office, because I know they do things, and there was, through the Y, so we're going to, contact them just to see what other things they have out there for us too.
So we do have, last thing on the agenda is for an executive session, so we would read the whole thing.
Yeah, so, please, if we could have a motion for an executive session pursuant to 61.810(1)(c) for discussion of pending litigation, John Vance et al. Versus City of Paris, for which disclosure of details might compromise the litigation posture.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. we're gonna take just a quick moment to